If you AV, you've seen this. This is the circle of hate between AV and the ADS. Hit, run, rep, return. It's not balanced, we all know it. However, it's not one-sided. I've shown many times that AV cannot be seen by pilots, which gives AV an advantage. Look at that. Those guys were already launching while I couldn't see them. And then, to top it off, the swarms go invisible.
Got the swarm up there, Judge.
Thanks, Delboy. I had noticed. Pilots have the afterburner that can outrun swarms, which is an advantage to them. There are two sides to this story, but before we start, we have some myths to bust, and we also need to look at our two combatants and their tools. The Swarmer, a Minmatar commando, braving the battlefield surrounded by slayers, hounded by the invisible, hunted by huge mobile guns. Even when we manage to destroy our fast and heavily armoured targets, we still have a fight on our hands, as the driver often jumps out in a heavy suit, which by the way is totally unfair. Tankers and pilots should not be able to jump out that quickly. A delay before exit would work wonders. Imagine you had to wait a few seconds after pressing exit to leave the vehicle, or had a hacking icon, like when recalling. Goodbye cheap tankers, cavalry dropship pilots, and HMG lavers. Then our swarmers might get the kills and war points we earned. We have these pilots, who are hounded by redline tanks using powerful free turrets to guard them. Big hits from nowhere, an invisible forge is 300 meters away shooting across the map at you.
Watch out, swarms run. All those swarms are coming my way. Nuke a swarm if you can.
Swarmers who do not render.
Shit, that's the false guys. We almost
Forges that can one-shot you from the red line. RDVs swiping 500,000 ships from the sky.
touch from the point.
Wow, I just got RDV'd. Fuck off.
Although to be fair, RDVs are dicks to swarmers too. Labs with rail turrets.
What's up a missile tank coming down from the hill?
Other dropships, more. Let's be fair to everyone here. Dust is a dangerous place for AV and a dangerous place for pilots. When we look at how swarms and the ADS interact, there are a few things we have to know. Swarms fire missiles. These missiles have to travel to the ADS before they can damage it. Travelling takes time. So how long does it take for a swarm to travel a certain distance?
5 per sec.
This dropship's 92 meters away. Once the missiles leave my launcher, it takes them 3.3 seconds to reach the dropship. Simple math, distance divided by time gives us the speed. 92 divided by 3.3 is 28 meters per second. However, this is not the full story. This installation is 170 meters away. It takes 4.8 seconds for them to travel and hit it. Same math, 170 divided by 4.5 gives us missiles that travel at 35 meters per second. So how can we get two different numbers? 28 meters per second, 35 meters per second. Which is it? The difference tells us that swarms have an acceleration and a top speed. They do not leave the barrel at their top speed. It takes them time to reach maximum velocity. This is extremely important to hitting an ADS and how swarms work. When we talk about changing swarm range, acceleration is a huge factor. If you don't understand it, you don't understand swarms or dropship balance. CCP publicly published data about all things it does, including the ADS and the swarms. It's called the SDE, Static Data Export. If we look at this data, we know swarms have acceleration, and we know the top speed. Swarms leave the barrel at 5 meters per second, then accelerate at 10 meters per second until they reach 50 meters per second. After that, they continue to travel at 50 meters per second for 400 meters or 9 seconds. This chart shows swarm acceleration and how far they can travel in that time. As you can see, at 9 seconds they explode. If we map the two examples from the game I just showed you, we can see the chart matches reality. Here is that dropship 92 meters away. Impact is at 3.3 seconds as we saw, and here is the turret 170 meters away. Again, as we saw, impact 4.8 seconds. All we need to know now is how fast dropships move, and we can get a picture of how these two interact. Alpha is 300 meters away. It takes me 9 seconds to get 250 meters. That's 27 meters per second. We know that dropships travel at 50 meters per second top speed, according to the SDE, so 27 is wrong. As you can clearly see, I start slow and it takes some time to get to full speed. Let's look at an incubus. As you know, armor plate slows you down, although I have the skill that reduces this slowdown. How does a top level incubus compare in a speed run to a python? What do you think? Slower? The same? Faster? It's 9 seconds. It's exactly the same from a standing start as a python. And I bet that's a surprise to many of you. In fact, their travel curve is the same too. It looks like this. I ran tests like these many times, including having a sniper standing at the other side of the map pointing at me as I rushed towards him. The average time I got was 5.26 seconds to travel the first 100 meters, 8.53 seconds to travel 270 meters. This gives the ADS an acceleration of around 9.8 meters per second, reaching top speed of 50 meters per second in just over 5 seconds. Let's put these together, the swarm and the ADS. So what are you looking at? If the dropship's 0 meters from you when you shoot it, you always hit it. We can see that because the red line, swarms, is above the purple line, the ADS. It's clear if we look at the chart for that ADS that was 92 meters away. The orange line is level as the dropship's hovering. As you see, the lines cross at 3.3 seconds. When red crosses orange is when and where the swarms hit. But dropships don't always see swarms. We're not always hovering and often choose to fly directly at AV. There is one more factor we have to look at before we can go further, so let's complete the circle of hate and look at the afterburner. We have some myth busting to do. So swarmers, pilots, I've got a pop quiz for you. Time to place your bets. 2 pythons going full speed as they approach the start line, this MCC. As they cross the line, the one on the right will turn on his afterburner. Who reaches the enemy MCC, turns around and gets back to the other friendly MCC first? Let's see. The afterburner wins by a good 2 seconds. As we all know, the afterburner makes your ADS a lot faster. Or does it? Watch that again. Now, that may be a shock to some, but both hit the red line at exactly the same time, which means only one thing: the afterburner does not increase your top speed. So how come the afterburner ship got back first? See, during the turn, both ships face north at the exact same time. So they can turn as quickly as each other. So top speed and turn speed are the same. But here's the difference. The afterburner ship reaches the red line first. So why? Acceleration. The afterburner ship loses less speed as it turns and accelerates faster after it turns. So any speed that's bled off is pushed straight back. Here's a takeoff comparison. This is the effect of the afterburner, almost straight to top speed. Now we have the ADS, afterburner, swarm's acceleration and distance over time. We can add it to charts, but we need to compare this to reality too, or it's useless. This chart shows all three. Look at this chart as if the swarm missiles, an ADS, and an ADS with an afterburner already running, all left the exact same spot on the map at the same time and had a race. The swarms in red travel further in 9 seconds than the dropship in purple. The distance between the lines gets wider, meaning swarms out-accelerate an ADS as well. This looks fine, it's what we'd expect. The ADS running an afterburner, however, can travel further than a swarm missile in 9 seconds. In other words, the ADS with an afterburner is faster than a swarm. Now this sounds like a problem. Actually it is, and it isn't. In terms of real gameplay, it's not this which causes issues. It's this space here. The afterburner's ability to out-accelerate swarms is more of an issue. Watch this fight. The footage is for 1.8, but the swarm and ADS speeds are the same as Charlie, so it makes no difference. Dropships tend to engage ground forces at 50 to 80 meters. This pilot's 88 meters away, hovering, almost stationary when I launch my missiles. 2.2 seconds after I launch my missiles, he hits his afterburner. The chart we just looked at, this one, is good for a comparison, but ADSs are never parked next to swarmers and they don't race. So let's move the ADS 88 meters away like in the video. And now let's put a line showing the dropship hovering at 88 meters. What this means is that if the dropship had its back to you and flew away as soon as you fired, you would hit. If it hit its afterburner, you never hit it. If it hovers, then at 3 seconds, you hit it, as we see here, when the ADS line crosses the swarm line. The pilot in this case hit his afterburner 2 seconds after the swarm launch, so that looks like this. So we'd expect a hit 8.8 seconds after the missile launch. Which is exactly what we get. Look again at this clip with the swarmers on the silo. The only reason I didn't die was because of the afterburner I used. I just outran the swarms. They're too slow. Or is the afterburner too fast? This is 2 separate battles on the same map, not 2 views of the same battle. But they do meet up in the middle and then split into diverging timelines. This is very representative of the 2 worlds these enemies live in. This is exactly how the ground battle below plays out when you're a swarmer, and what pilots experience of a similar battle. The swarm player on the left is here. Different game, But there are 4 enemy players in this spot in the right hand battle too. You just cannot see them. Focus on the right hand window for the next 10 seconds. Here our 2 battles meet. My dropship on the right is in exactly the same spot as the one on the left. On the right, I've just been hit by the swarm player standing where the swarm on the left is standing now. I'm at the limit of the lock range here. If you factor in resistance and our HP, we're both 2 hits from death. Both turn slightly towards our attackers. This is what the swarmer can see and what the dropship can see of where the swarmer is. What are the options? Fight, ignore, flight. On the left, the pilot chooses to fight, on the right, to run. Running was the only option to survive, and not just running. Without an afterburner, like the ship on the left, there is no way to survive in that situation. The ease at which the swarm got the drop on the dropship and the range you can engage from leaves the dropship in a reactive state, not a proactive one. To see the threat, I need a squad mate in the right place with a scanner, or I need to be looking in the right directions, which means I already have to be under fire to know a threat exists in most battles. The same situation exists here. The afterburner saved me from certain death. Was this unfair on the swarmers, as I escaped at least 2 AV shooting at me, or was it unfair on me, as I was only in so much trouble anyway because of the rendering issues and the swarm bugs? Where we need clarity is when a dropship should survive and when it should not. What makes a fair engagement? We know that a dropship's realistic engagement range is around 60 meters. Further than that, and landing an aim shot with any accuracy is very difficult due to the rendering. So most infantry engagements occur at that 60 to 70 meter range, often as close as 50. We need to pose questions to find the point of balance. For example, if I'm moving away from you and I'm 100 meters away, how many of your swarm volleys should hit me? What if I'm moving towards you at full speed? How many would be a fair number to hit then? If I'm hovering, shooting at you, how many volleys should be able to hit me with, and what's my escape window? We know how fast a swarm goes. We know how fast a dropship goes. We know how rapidly swarms can be fired, so we can model this. Now, I'm about to show you a confusing looking spaghetti junction chart. Don't zone out. This is pretty simple. I'll try and keep it short. But it's really important, so I'm afraid we have to go here. These lines are swarm volleys. Remember that dropship at 92 meters. That's here, 3.3 seconds, 92 meters. And the turret at 170. That's here at 5 seconds. The second swarm leaves the barrel 3 seconds after the first, that's here. Then the third swarm, then 6 seconds to reload and relock, and the next volley here. Let's add a dropship that's hovering 92 meters away. This is our 3.3 second hit. Next is here, then here. We can see for a dropship hovering at 92 meters away, it takes 18 seconds of looking at the sky to get 4 volleys into it. A hardened Python, the most resilient build against swarms, takes 5 hits to kill. That's off here at 22 seconds. The swarmer has to spend 22 seconds looking at the sky, ignoring ground troops. Now that seems way too much to me. But we have to consider that at 92 meters the ADS isn't a threat to the swarm. As we know, the hover engagements happen at 60 meters. Further than that, and the enemy is hardly visible. Check out this guy at 62 meters. This was my longest kill of the match. At this point, which is about 80 meters, I cannot see any targets. They are here, I assure you, and they can see me. I only know they're here because Delboy told me. You can see his rockets going past. As you see at that close range, targets are tiny. This is why most ADS fights happen at this distance. Now for gunners it's not the same, but that's something we'll have to tackle in another video. As you also see, I attack by approaching, switch to a strafing hover, where my distance is maintained, then start shooting. This is the norm. Came in fast at 60 meters or so, circle the enemy at 60 meters, then leave. But most battles are not like this. Until a swarm fires, I don't even know they're an AV player. This is more usual. I'm on other business and I get hit several times but with no idea where it's from.
Yep, they all come up in SCRU. Yeah, I see them.
Or this when I engage one target but I'm attacked by AV far off. Dropships have to operate in the sky, we are easily visible to ground forces. The nature of this is that dropships almost always take 2 hits before they know where the threat is or can consider a retreat. We need that much time to work out the direction of the threat and the best direction to retreat to. Those were militia swarms, the weakest in the game that are super cheap and available to anybody. Still a threat. While we're here, I want to point out something about the shield booster I was using on this fit. My shields are gone and I'm down to 617 armor. But I'm just activating my booster here.
Oh, double swarm.
Another volley is already on the way. Notice the shield here says 1124, but the graphic shows I have about 30 shields.
Just be careful.
After the swarmer hits it, I'm down to 125. Then you see my shield regen cycle started. So shield boosters do give you all your shields. It happens in about 0.8 seconds. But the shield graphic does not fill at the same time, so it looks like the booster didn't fully trigger, but it did. It also shows that the shield booster does trigger shield regen after that 0.8 second delay, if it's hit immediately afterwards. That was 2 players with the worst AV and there was still no way I could fight them. So let's use the charts to map this reality and see where we stand and what can be done to bring balance to swarms. I'll have to leave bringing balance to the forge till later. Now this looks like hell, but it's pretty straightforward. It's these graphs we need to look at to balance. It's not too tricky. A line with arrows is a dropship, no arrows is a swarm. So I'm 60 meters away, hovering still. This makes me a threat to the AV player in my field of view. He fires at me, and here, 2 seconds later, I have time to see it and react. This is the average time it takes to see a swarm, stop what you're doing, assess the situation, and move the nose towards or away from a threat. This purple line represents a dropship with his back already turned, that flies away as fast as it can. In other words, a dropship who's shot in the back by a swarm. This orange line is a dropship that's moving away at a speed and angle that represents sideways movement. The lower orange line is the dropship flying directly towards the swarmer. The light blue line here represents what happens immediately as you turn on the afterburner. We learn a few things. In the best case scenario, the purple line, without an afterburner, no dropship can outrun your first 2 swarms, but it can escape the third. Any dropship moving anything other than directly away from you will take 3 swarms at least. An afterburner fitted ADS will take at least 1 hit from a swarm, but this is if he sees you first. This chart is more likely. Hit 1 hits and the dropship decides what to do next. Swarms are guaranteed 2 hits. The afterburner ship would only escape the second swarm if he has quick reactions, just under half a second, and is over 75 meters away. If you look at these engagement charts, you can see a few things that will have a greater effect on swarms than others. Changing max range won't help much, nor will lock range. Lock range changes will cause the dropship to fly away sooner, you'll get less kills. If you want to increase ADS deaths and swarmer kills, we could do this. Dropping the fire rate by a second with decreased lock times means even an afterburner would take at least 2 hits. Or we could increase the swarm acceleration. Dropships need the afterburner though to avoid forge guns. Without it, we're extremely vulnerable. A good start would be to increase swarm top speed and their acceleration, but at the same time decrease their turn radius. This allows pilots to use skill for evasion. I would not recommend touching lock range, as this allows engagement on many maps from the red line and from distances way too far off to counter. The maps are just too small for range increase at this time. We don't need to write it off completely, but we need to push other options first. There are other things we can do to increase balance. We could remove the afterburner and add modules that increase shield hardening by 200%, but are only active for 2 seconds. Since we can't add flares at this time, this module would act as a response to swarms. Turn it on immediately before you're hit, absorb the hit, move on. So there are plenty of things we can do, but we need to be careful. Swarm balance is not a simple matter, but CCP and the CPM are aware of the issues and working hard to resolve them, but a gentle touch is needed. Look at the other variables outside of damage and range. They are more tied to balance at this point than damage and range are.
Fuck up there, you useless blueberries.
You've been judged.